July 25, 1944. Imagine you are one of the toughest, most battle-hardened soldiers in the world, a veteran of Rommel's Africa Corps, having survived the earth-shaking barrages of the Eastern Front. You were dug in west of St. Lo, Normandy, in the dense bocage on the morning of July 25, 1944. After 6 relentless weeks of American artillery harassment, the air suddenly goes silent at 9:37 a.m. The quiet is not a relief. It's a heavy, ominous blanket. For General Lieutenant Fritz Bayerlein, commanding the Panzer Lehr Division, that silence signaled not a retreat, but a terrifying unknown. At precisely 9:38 a.m., over 1,000 American artillery pieces fired in perfect coordination. Not in a sequence, not in a rolling barrage like every military manual dictated for centuries, but all at once. Shells fired from ranges of 6 miles to 15 miles, from light 105mm howitzers to massive 240mm batteries, had been calculated to arrive at the German lines at the exact same instant. This was not merely bombardment. This was a weaponized demonstration of American industrial coordination and mathematical precision, a force that would shatter the German defense and fundamentally change the nature of modern warfare. To understand this revolutionary tactic, dubbed time on target, or TOT, you must first understand the old rules. For decades, artillery was predictable. World War I's rolling barrages crept ahead of the infantry at a known pace. The German Wehrmacht prided itself on its Schwerpunkt, or point of main effort doctrine, which used concentrated fire quickly, often directed by forward observers working with single batteries. But while German artillery was flexible, American planners conceived of artillery as a coordinated, integrated system. The initial American struggles with fire coordination in North Africa, like at Kasserine Pass, were quickly corrected by applying industrial management principles to military science. The ability to execute a TOT mission required 4 key innovations the Germans hadn't fully grasped. First, a vast forward observer system. Unlike their German counterparts, American FOs could call upon entire artillery groups, sometimes corps-level assets, using reliable FM radios like the SCR-610. Second, the Fire Direction Center. This was essentially a mathematical nerve center where trained personnel used slide rules, firing tables, and graphical plotting boards to compute complex firing solutions for multiple batteries concurrently. Third, an almost obsessive dedication to communication infrastructure. American divisions might lay thousands of miles of redundant telephone wire in a month to ensure fire missions could be transmitted instantly to dozens of batteries. The fourth, and often overlooked element, was standardization. Every American shell and gun was manufactured to such exacting specifications that a 105mm round from any howitzer had predictable ballistic characteristics. This industrial consistency was vital for the required mathematical precision, a consistency the German system, increasingly reliant on slave labor and dispersed production, simply could not match. The Germans had glimpses of this technique in Italy, dismissing them as coincidences. But on May 23, 1944, the Anzio breakout saw 16 battalions, over 200 guns, deliver a coordinated fire on German lines, finally gaining their attention. On July 25, 1944, however, General Omar Bradley unleashed the full power of the TOT, launching Operation Cobra. Over 1,000 artillery pieces were concentrated in the target area, firing a staggering 170,000 artillery shells allocated for the operation. The target was a rectangle south of the St. Lo-Perrier Road, holding the bulk of the Panzer Lehr Division and elements of the 5th Fallschirmjäger Division. The shells converged in a coordinated moment of destruction. Successive TOT concentrations were walked through the German positions at precise intervals. When the barrage lifted, Panzer Lehr, which entered Normandy with 190 tanks, had essentially ceased to exist as a coherent fighting force. General Bayerlein's famous assessment to Field Marshal von Kluge was grim. "My front lines look like the face of the moon, and at least 70% of my troops are out of action, dead, wounded, crazed, or numbed." The complexity of the TOT was extraordinary. To make shells from different guns arrive together, the FDC had to account for the exact location of each battery, distance to the target, muzzle velocity, shell weight, wind speed at various altitudes, air temperature, and even the rotation of the Earth for long-range fire. The Americans used specialized graphical computation tools, allowing them to solve these problems rapidly, a speed the German system of conventional firing tables could never achieve. The full terror of TOT was later demonstrated during the German counteroffensive at Mortain in August 1944. As German armor concentrated, American FOs watched from Hill 317. When the assault began at midnight, TOT missions were called in on pre-registered coordinates. In one instance, the 30th Infantry Division, though overnumbered, called in TOT missions from 7 separate battalions. The concentrated firepower created what German survivors described as solid walls of hot steel, making advance impossible. Field Marshal von Kluge reported to Hitler that continuing the offensive was impossible against such artillery superiority. The American success was a triumph of training. The U.S. Army had transformed millions of civilians into skilled practitioners of complex military science. The Field Artillery School at Fort Sill developed an intensive 17-week program. Students practiced calculating TOT solutions until the process became automatic, graduating FDC teams that could calculate a 10-battery TOT mission in under 180 seconds. This mass production of technical expertise, treating military education like a scalable factory process, astounded German professionals. As the war progressed, the TOT became even more lethal. During the Battle of the Bulge in December 1944, the VT, variable time, proximity fuse was incorporated into TOT barrages. These fuses detonated the shells at an optimal height above the ground, creating a uniform pattern of shrapnel that no foxhole or slit trench could protect against. The Germans initially believed the Americans had developed an entirely new, secret weapon. The combination of precise timing and proximity fuses created devastating results, even in dense terrain like the Hurtgen Forest, where specialized tree-burst TOT missions detonated shells in the forest canopy, creating instant hell with wood splinters and burning white phosphorus. The systematic destruction continued at the Falaz Pocket in August 1944. As German forces struggled to escape, American artillery delivered continuous TOT missions on escape routes at 30-minute intervals throughout daylight hours. The road became known as the Corridor of Death, with artillery accounting for the majority of the 10,000 German soldiers killed. The psychological trauma was unparalleled. Veterans who had survived hours-long Soviet barrages were broken by 30-second TOT bombardments. The instantaneous nature of the fire removed all psychological coping mechanisms. There was no escalation to mentally prepare for, no rhythm to anticipate. German field hospitals documented soldiers experiencing paralysis triggered by sudden sounds and a profound fear of synchronicity itself. The final massive demonstration came during the Rhine crossings in March 1945. At Wesel, the Allies concentrated 4,000 guns with 270 American pieces in an opening 4-hour bombardment featuring coordinated TOT strikes at 15-minute intervals. At Oppenheim, Patton's Third Army crossing was supported by a 60-second TOT barrage that delivered 10,000 shells. German commanders reported that entire battalions simply ceased to exist. What German officers ultimately recognized was that time on target represented the application of American industrial methods to warfare. The same organizational efficiency that allowed American factories to mass-produce bombers and ships allowed their artillery to coordinate hundreds of guns. The Wehrmacht was defeated not by better soldiers, but by better systems, not by superior courage, but by superior coordination. The computational methods and integrated communication networks pioneered for TOT laid the groundwork for modern computerized fire control systems. The thunder that fell on Normandy in 1944 announced the arrival of a new age in human conflict, where industrial mathematics proved more powerful than martial tradition. The lesson was clear. As Field Marshal Montgomery noted, warfare had become a matter of industrial and organizational superiority. In the age of industrial warfare, organization triumphs over courage, and coordinated time conquers all.